Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever it is, wherever you are. I'm Austin Tichenor of the Reduced Shakespeare Deck.
And I'm Gary Andrews, otherwise known as Gary Scribbler, from various places on the internet.
And once again, whether people like it or not, we're back with another episode of Drawing on Shakespeare. And I've dressed up for our guest today, Gary.
It's very smart. I didn't, alas. I didn't get the memo, but you're looking very smart. I barely recognised you.
I know. Well, thank you very much. Well, I just thought, you know, it wants to be Shakespearean and a little irreverent, but it also wants to be classy, dressy, because we're talking today to a Shakespeare tycoon, a Zoom tycoon, a Tyzoom. He is the creator of the Shakespeare Deck, and he's also the creator and head cheese of The Show Must Go Online, which has taken the interwebs by storm. Mr. Robert Myles. How are you, Rob?
Hi there, I'm great. What an extraordinary introduction. That's probably the best introduction I've ever received. And possibly ever.
And now I'll take these off so I can actually see you.
Wonderful, wonderful. Sunglasses indoors, always a strong look. Always a strong look. That's a great T-shirt as well. Definitely a fan of the red nose. Throwing back to our production of Hamlet a couple of weeks ago.
Well, and this is the thing I want to talk to. I mean, Show Must Go Online has become such an invaluable tool, resource, and archive of all of Shakespeare's plays, done via Zoom, and useful in the sense that everything I know about Zoom I have learned from you. How it works and how to turn a camera off and on and where to stand in a frame. And but also you give such attention to every moment of the play, gets equal weight and attention and love and talent. And you don't see that frequently on stage because it actually makes the plays a lot longer, but it's such a great resource. And I'm dying to know how you came to this, what your approach to Shakespeare is, how thrilled are you to almost be 2/3 of the way through the canon, and how much do you wish you'd never started this thing? You know, all of these things.
And go.
Right.
All right, off to the races.
And talk.
Good thing. So the kind of I've had to tell the story quite a bit, so I'm hoping I can do it reasonably efficiently.
Yes, give us the reduced version.
Yeah, exactly. The reduced Shakespeare version of this story. Yeah. So I lost a gig in March that was going to take me through April, and on the same day, I think probably 10 other friends announced that they'd lost gigs as well. And so it very quickly became clear that this thing wasn't going away. But this was before lockdown. This was before theatres had shut down, all that kind of thing. And it was simply a matter of, if you work as I do in mid-scale regional touring, fringe theatre, not in the established commercial theatre setting, you're kind of the canary in the coal mine, and you're the first people to go, the snowballs that create the avalanche. And so there's a wonderful film, I don't know if you've seen The Big Short, but The Big Short is all about people that bet against the system and go, you know what, I'd rather be super pessimistic because most times things go wrong. And so it was like, okay, if all of this has happened so quickly, like within the space of a day, it's probably going to have an exponential impact. And so immediately just started thinking about, well, okay, if I'm not going to be doing what I thought I was doing, what should I do? And a great friend of mine, John Lebillan, had done a play reading group just in the pub where everybody came together and cold read Shakespeare's plays, and they did the entire chronology. And I was like, bloody hell, mate, that's a lot of work. But then when this came up, it was kind of like, well, what if we do play readings of Shakespeare via Zoom? Now, not to brag, but because of work that we've been doing in other areas, myself and my producing partner, Sarah Peachy, were familiar with Zoom before it was cool. It was actually kind of bizarre to watch it go on to become the ubiquitous tool of lockdown and kind of singularly associate with COVID, because we'd just been using it to telecommute to innovation gigs that we did with American clients and things of that nature. So whenever you had to work internationally, this was kind of the best way to do it. And so we knew that you could turn your camera off, we knew that you could mute, and we were like, well, that's essentially off stage and on stage. And that's as far as we've kind of thought it through. Then I put a tweet out saying, thinking about doing this thing, keep us connected and creative. That was the key thing, was like, while ever there's not anything else for us to be doing with our time, I know that I'm a workaholic. I know that many other actors that I know need to do this work. It's a compulsion. It's not a hobby. And as such, just wanted to create a space where I could do that and where other people could do that. And we received an extraordinary response. Within a matter of hours, we had hundreds and hundreds of people saying that they were interested in getting involved. And so I was very fortunate that I have some friends that work in data science and in mentoring and HR within universities. And so they were able to help me set up a system that was really inclusive and set up to show that this was a welcoming environment where people were encouraged to take part, no matter what their experience was, no matter what kind of group of people that they kind of hail from, because it was really important to us. You know, our kind of foundational tenet is Shakespeare is for everyone. And so we wanted to make sure that we were reaching out to underrepresented groups in theatre, that we were making sure that people of all levels of experience had a chance to work alongside each other, learn from each other, a bit like those kind of romanticised tales of the old rep, where you would go and there'd be these kind of really experienced actors alongside complete newbies, and the newbies would just be there being like, oh my God, this is amazing, you know, soaking all of this up, which sadly we don't get an opportunity to do much of anymore. And so, yeah, it was just a kind of idyllic, utopic kind of notion that for whatever reason, and I suppose because it was hopeful or optimistic in some way, captured the imagination of people that were out there with nothing to do, and they decided to come and do this, and that was fab.
Well, and you bragged about your Zoom know-how, but you didn't brag about your Shakespeare know-how, because you created the Shakespeare Deck, so clearly Shakespeare's in your DNA. And I've been lucky enough to be in 2 of your productions, the wildly popular King John, and As You Like It, which was very fun. And as we record, we're about to start rehearsals for Troilus and Cressida.
I marvel at your ability to interpret, synthesize, explain, and direct the plays to a company of, as you say, actors with varying levels of experience and interest and tastes, and get us all rowing in the same direction. I mean, that's really an achievement that I'm not sure you can teach. So how much rehearsal do you have to do on how much thinking, how much preparation, I guess, do you have to do for every play? Do you just have them all in your head?
I don't have them all. I don't have them all by any means. And if it seems like I do, then I've obviously done something right. But that is definitely, I feel like if that was to be stress tested, that you might find the weak spots. But no, it's some of the plays obviously I know better than others, as everybody does. There's those kind of top 10 famous plays that everyone's seen 100 times, and that's all good. But no, I think I do as much preparation as I can is the short answer. So Troilus and Cressida, let's take that as an example. We're about to go into rehearsals for that. It is a play, it is a language play, and it is a play that is trying to make a joke out of nothing happening. The degree to which it succeeds varies. And especially, I think, in a situation like we're in now with lockdown and the fact that people have had 6 months of nothing happening, what I'm tackling at the minute is how much can people bear of this at a time like this? And how can we give it the energy and life that it needs and the dexterity of reading that it takes to allow this to hold people's interest? Because what this play does not have is plot. 3 things happen in the whole piece. And so everything else is just talking about it. And Ulysses in particular has this incredible ability to go off on a 100-line speech and sum it up in 2 lines at the end. And it's the gag is, why didn't you just start with that? Right? And so it is a unique challenge this week. And because of that, I feel like, you know, and I've never read this play before yesterday. So I started reading this play for the first time when I'm about to direct it. So we're still editing it. We'll finish that probably tonight. I will spend Saturday researching it. And so I am a fan of the site JSTOR, which I'm sure you're probably familiar with. You get a number of free articles a month on JSTOR, and I do my best not to exceed that. But I just go in and a little bit like, I don't know if you remember Johnny 5, the robot that just like go brrr, more input like that. I'm just doing that, basically. I'm just trying to download into my brain as much as I can about this play. A lot of stuff that I don't necessarily agree with, but what I find often is really nice is if there's some scholarship out there that I'm like, come on, that's a load of rubbish. At least that points me where I want to go and tells me something about what my taste is. So I love to see dissident opinions as well as things that I think are genuinely helpful. But obviously, I have maybe 8 to 10 hours to do that prep before the show. And I think that's where, I guess, the Shakespeare Deck comes in, is that through the process of having to digest 10 years of material as a practical actor and being unable to take 10 years of books that I've read with me to a rehearsal, it's not physically possible. And having to go, all right, how do I condense this down to the simplest, most actionable, most useful to an actor kind of thing possible? Once I've crunched all that information down and put it in the Shakespeare Deck, it started as a tool for myself as an actor, because I can't remember all this stuff. It's just not possible. I don't have the RAM in my head to go, oh, that's a tricolon and that's a chiasmus and that's all this kind of thing. So I keep them on paper, on cue cards, so that I can go, what am I looking for? Oh yeah, that's what it looks like. Cool, that's one of them, tick it off. Now I know what to do with it. And I think because I've been through that process, maybe that has been what's made this quick turnaround possible, is that I'm able to a certain extent, read the sheet music just that little bit more readily, maybe, than someone that hasn't lived in it for that kind of time, I suppose.
Well, and you're on a treadmill. You've put yourself onto this treadmill because you do 2 days of reading and researching, then 4 days of rehearsal, then you take a day off and you start again. And
well, a day off is ambitious, shall we say?
Right.
Often, because as well now, like, we're casting a week in advance, and so that means we've actually got 3 plays in our head at once. We've got the one that we're going to rehearse next, the one that's happening, and the one that we're casting. And so it's, the plates are spinning constantly. Yeah, it's intense.
Well, and I'm looking through the deck now. I mean, again, you're not a complete neophyte. You come to this, you've done your Shakespeare work. This is not a game. This is a tool, yeah?
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah. And obviously, it's gamified in a way. We've tried to make it colourful, we've tried to make it accessible, we've tried to make it simple to understand. But the point of it really is, there's 4 faces in there. So you've got forensic linguistics, which is what is all the stuff that Shakespeare coded into the text that is there to help the actor? Because when Shakespeare was writing, and the actors that he was working with would have all shared the same grammar school education, which relied heavily on set rules, and everyone understood those rules, and when they looked at the paper, those rules would jump off the page to them and go, that's how I'm supposed to act it. Because in Shakespeare's time, there wasn't a director per se. Shakespeare was very busy writing, and so probably would have had limited time to coach his actors, and so he tried to embroider as much of it into the text as possible to minimize the amount of time he was getting hassled about what does this mean. You know what it means because of how it's structured. So there's all that kind of stuff in there. You've then got rhetoric, which is this idea from classical Greece. They didn't discover it, they just identified it. They went, that was really convincing. Why was it really convincing? And
it was so rhetorical.
Yeah, yes, exactly. And it's funny because rhetoric now is almost like it's one of those many words that are associated with Shakespeare that now have a kind of insulting connotation to them. So when we say rhetoric now, we mean the manipulations of politicians. But what Plato actually described rhetoric as is the art of stirring the soul. And he believed that only a just person with a just cause could actually use pure rhetoric, as he called it, because it had to come from a real place. And when you think about acting and the idea of mere rhetoric being what politicians use to manipulate, and then the idea of actors that don't kind of necessarily bring the text out of them from a real place and engage with it in that way, we can tell the difference with that with acting, just as we can tell the difference with politicians. And I think that's one of the reasons why Shakespeare being for everyone is so important, is because as much as anything else, it teaches you to understand the mechanisms of power, and also by extension the mechanisms of manipulation, because certain characters will use mere rhetoric. They will use structure to make an argument sound compelling while they're lying through their bloody teeth about it, and that's, Iago is the classic example, who comes on and goes, I'm going to lie to you about this now, and then goes off for, 500 lines about it. But Yeah, so you've got rhetoric in there as well, and then you've got working the text, which is all about how you can start to embody it, make it engage with you as a human being and you as an actor and a performer. And then you've got engaging the audience, which is how to not waste people's time. Essentially, it's how to make the play feel like it was worth coming to. And that, for me, is the responsibility of each individual actor. So again, if you look at Shakespeare's original practice, if you like, there wouldn't have been a director there to be singularly responsible for that. It would have been each actor's individual job to go into business for themselves and look at how they can best serve the story of the play. And I think that's why, I've got exercises in there about when are you winning and when are you losing? Because I think that's something that people can often lose sight of, is that you have to lose. And it's something that I actually derived from professional wrestling. Because in professional wrestling, you have people called jobbers whose only point of existence is to make the other guy look good and to lose valiantly. And then you've got heels whose only job is to be the biggest bastard that they can be to make the hero look better when they overcome. And that
you just described two of my biggest casting niches. Making the other guy look good. That's my job, baby.
Yeah.
Fabulous. But it is a real skill, if you think about in sword fighting as well, Basil Rathbone, he always used to play the bad guy because he was the best fighter, so he would make the stars look good. So I think, all this to say, Austin, if you're getting cast in those roles, it's because the best people naturally have to play those roles.
I never heard it put quite that way, and of course you're absolutely right. Gary, I've been dominating the questions. Any directions you want me to go?
No, I'm just. I did have a question that came into my head, but as usual, I'm sitting here trying to plan what I'm going to draw, and then the questions go out of my head when it's just sort of...
Well, here's the question I was going to ask, and maybe this is helpful to you, Gary. Have you discovered in this Zoom venue, Rob, characters, Shakespeare characters or plays that work better? And I ask because I thought your Hamlet worked better in close-up and intimately, maybe better than many live productions I've seen.
Yeah, it's been a fascinating part of that process, actually. And I think there are definitely characters that work better in this medium. I think there's definitely plays that arguably can work better in this medium, certainly. Julius Caesar was another one where it's all conspiracy and it's all about the fear of being overheard. And if you're in a 1,000-seat theatre, you can't sell that for practical reasons to the extent that you can. If you're here and you're just sort of talking to people very quietly, that's much more, the audience can pick up on that cue and you can create that atmosphere so much more effectively via Zoom than you ever possibly could in a theatre space. Similarly, Hamlet, where you've got a character, we had it with the bastard in King John as well, actually, a character that speaks extensively to the audience and has private conversations. This almost starts to feel like their YouTube channel or their vlog rather, where, they are confessing their innermost thoughts. They are working through their innermost problems with the benefit of an audience. And in that way, it feels more intimate, I suppose, and more connected, which is bizarre because it's the most disconnected thing in the world. Right now, as I speak to you, and I'm hoping that I'm trying to really engage you, what I'm actually looking at is a white dot next to a black dot, which is my camera. And I can't feel any connection whatsoever. And so it's a testament to those actors that have a knack for it, that they can invest that with the quality of a confidant or a confessor.
After King John, one of the actors texted me and said, "It was so good looking in your eyes." I was going, "You were looking in my eyes?" I wasn't looking in your eyes. I was looking at my script just over the lens or into the lens.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's one thing that people don't necessarily appreciate, I suppose, just watching the shows, because we try and hide it from them. It's part of the magicianship of it. Often we get, how long did it take you to learn the lines? We still get people asking that. And of course we don't, is the answer. We're reading them essentially off an auto cue. But yeah, that does mean that we are reading along as opposed to necessarily engaging with the other actor. And I think what's lovely about that is that it puts Shakespeare back to its roots in a way, because it makes it an auditory experience a lot of the time. So we still call it an audience, which comes from audio, to hear. So it's not actually about the visual spectacle necessarily, although certainly Shakespeare was all up for a bit of visual spectacle, and especially as the plays progress as well. Nevertheless, it is about that listening experience. And I think what is great about this medium for actors is that it demands that you listen really attentively, but it also demands that you respond to what you're hearing viscerally and immediately and continuously, because we've likened it to the Muppet Show. Everyone's got their little tile and they all have to be putting some energy in. And that means that we need to see you actively invested and listening and having an opinion on what's being said and all that kind of thing. Because if you're just sitting, you're just collapsing the energy of the scene like a souffle. So, no one can be that spare part. Everyone has to be, churning that energy up and keeping it high.
Well, and I love that you put the responsibility on the actors. Here's my note: don't be boring. It's true on stage. It's true on stage as well. It's amazingly cast. You have such a wonderful, diverse group of folks in every way in the shows, and so it's very fun, and it brings some of the most famous large roles have been played by women, and I thought have been incredibly insightful. And what I love about that is that it just reminds everybody this is a play. It's pretend. We are all putting on dopey hats and wigs and voices and saying lines written for us 400 years ago. There's a great theatricality, and as Sir Toby says in Twelfth Night, I smell a device. You are constantly innovating with things that you pass from one screen to another, or fight scenes that happen from one screen to another. That's really engaging as well.
On a technical point of view, also talking about the things going from screen to screen, do you have control at your end as to who's next to who and where? No, randomly can sort of just pop up. So I wonder if you've got a chance. Can someone go bang and hit something? Do you know where they're going to be, or is that random?
No, that's actually something that we're currently still months on in the middle of R&Ding. There is technically a way, but it requires several intermediary processes.
Right.
And then essentially like a live editor, like a TV editor.
Okay.
To actually do the work of putting people in the right constellations, as it were. So all of that is beyond the scope of what we're capable of so far. Okay. And we still don't know whether it's going to be possible, because it may well be proprietary technology, the budget for which is outside the scope of a free project. So no, what we do is pray to the Zoom gods. And very occasionally you get magical moments. I'm thinking specifically of when we had the joust between Mowbray and, is it York? No, Bolingbroke. Mowbray and Bolingbroke.
Richard II, right.
And their screens aligned perfectly. So you had them pointing at each other with their lancers, galloping on their horses, with Richard II below them kind of watching what they were doing. And then you saw them, you saw Richard throw the staff down and then kind of rear up on their horses and stop. And of course, these lancers are mops and broomsticks, and the horses are literally a belt, which is used to indicate the reins. And you do this.
I love it.
And if you really commit, it kind of works.
Because doing this live, so you can't edit after. I mean, there has been famously some of these lovely sort of stunt things that have been put together where they cut together, and they're brilliant and they work really well. And if you were saying, we're going to record this and then put it together and do it after, then you could do all that, obviously, and put people where you want.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
Interesting. Yeah. The other question I had is off the back of Austin, where he said about you're reading an auto cue. And, I mean, have you built something into it for that? Or are you literally just talking about having your script on the screen and minimising the image at your end and just reading the script underneath?
It's pretty much that, exactly that.
Okay, so I did that. I was in the Austin readathon, a couple of those that have been on recently, and that's exactly what we did, just had the script. Yeah. Okay.
For King John, I actually had the script on my large monitor above my laptop lens, and so that was great. But for As You Like It, I was in my back garden. My back garden was standing in as the Forest of Arden. So yes, I'm concerned though, from an intellectual property standpoint, Rob, that these kind of horses is proprietary Monty Python technology, and you could be in for.
Oh, I think as long as there were no coconuts involved, you're okay.
Yeah, no, we eschewed the coconuts. for legal reasons. We had deep discussions with the Monty Python legal team, and they were quite staunch about it. No, but it was it's testament to that immortal line in the chorus of Henry V of "Let us on your imaginary forces work." And people get it. The audience get that the actors are in the same boat that they're in. They're not expecting to see real horses, and so they're happy to let their imaginations be kind of followed along. But in terms of the actual Zoom technology, probably the most ambitious thing that we did was to block the Romeo and Juliet kiss with multiple possibilities based on every orientation of where the cameras could end up on screen. Right. And then we live cued the actors on the night to say position A or position C or whatever. And then they would get told, because the YouTube live stream comes out different to how it looks on every individual's different thing. So we had to wait for their cameras turning on to come up on YouTube to know where they would be. That's on a 10-second delay. So we then had to convey that information straight to the actors to give them about 10 seconds notice to see the instruction and get prepared to turn their laptops in the correct relative direction to one another based on these multiple possibilities. So then they could lean into the edges of the frame and do the kiss so that they were kind of like looking at each other that way. And it took so much preparation to do just at one single moment.
So if Austin looks to his left at the moment, and puts his face towards the edge of his frame, I can either kiss him or I can punch him in the face. Bang! And I know that our setup works for that because I got us at the top and you at the bottom. Yeah, so that's, wow, look at that. Amazing. That's that's so cool. So cool.
I'm fascinated by where this goes. I mean, because now having worked with you 3 times and chatted with you a handful of times, I'm dying to see a production directed by you in a real theater.
On a stage, yeah, me too, mate.
Yeah. I think these are a great resource. Gary, when and if you get to, look at these videos, or when anybody does, they're incredibly intelligent readings of each text, whether they work as theater. That's for me.
I mean, this was the reason I mean, even before I knew you were involved with them, I'd already subscribed to the channel because I wanted to have these as a resource for myself anyway. Because having read about them and seen clips and done that, I knew it was something I wanted to have in my digital bookshelf,
Yeah, absolutely. I think a digital bookshelf is a wonderful way of looking at it, actually.
That is a great way. And Rob, not to blow smoke, but why not? Because you're here. I mean, I so admire and agree with your approach to the comedies, which is to ground the early bits of the comedies in real pain and real loss and real danger. So you have the lovers going off to, desperate in the way that the people in a tragedy are desperate. I think that's so intelligent, and productions all across the world miss that.
It's so funny, but people have asked me about like my approach, I suppose, and it's one word: it's contrast. Human beings are contrast engines. The largest part of our processing power in our brain is dedicated to our eyes. Our eyes can only see because they can determine the contrast between one thing and another. It defines in the way that people talk about how the language that you speak can define certain aspects of your perception, your personality. Contrast defines how we understand things. And in the comedies, when we laugh harder, we cry harder. And even in the tragedies, that's true as well. You need to come up for air now and again. And Shakespeare knew that, and he wrote that in. And you're doing a disservice to it if you don't allow those moments of levity to just give the audience just a little pressure release, a little valve. Because otherwise it can become unbearable, and you only invest in a story when you care about the characters, and for that they have to face hardships, unfortunately, because as Buddhism teaches, all life is suffering. And so if we just see everyone having a wonderful time forever, that doesn't feel compelling to us, and so you've got to find those contrasts and bring those contrasts out. And Shakespeare's number one favourite device in the writing of the plays and in the structure of the text is antithesis. It's taking two opposites and, like in a particle accelerator, smashing them together to release all of this energy, conceptual energy. And so to me, it's there's more complexity, I guess. There's more nuance to it than that. But if I was to sum it up, that would be essentially what is my litmus, what is my North Star while I'm doing this work.
Well, I think it's exactly right. And also, you don't skip over or elide over little tiny moments that might be extra textual. You know, they're character moments. There was a lovely moment in As You Like It, and I think it was Oliver and Orlando, the brothers, just helping each other, and they were down in the corner of the frame, and it was a very small, it wasn't even a line, it was just a look at each other, where they came to an understanding, the two of them, near the end of the play, and it was so gripping and really moving on a stupid Zoom screen.
Yeah, it was actually, I think it was Rosalind and the brother whose name has just fallen out of my head, which is
or Oliver.
Oliver, yeah, that was it. It was Rosalind and Oliver.
That's right.
Yeah,
that's right. Oliver guessed it.
Yeah, she faints and then Oliver guesses it. And it's one of those. It's always one of those questions when you're doing a production of As You Like It: is does Orlando find out at any point, and does he just play along? And to me, you know, my wife and producing partner Sarah Peachy, she specialises in play and play theory. And we are playful together. And I think one of the most compelling, joyful things to watch is couples who are playful together. And I think for me, it was really important that Orlando and Rosalind had that playfulness just innately within their dynamic. And you get to see that while it's Ganymede, but then it suddenly gets its full context and makes its full sense when the reveal happens. But what I loved as a thing to explore was the idea that Oliver's cottoned on, Oliver's figured it out. Oliver's related that information to Orlando, but out of respect for her safety, I suppose, or consent, or her giving her agency over when she chooses to reveal it, or just out of a sheer sense of fun, decides to keep the game going and decides to engage with her on the terms that she set. And I just thought that was a really lovely way to sell their relationship as something that was going to last, as opposed to the innocence of love or the naivety of a young relationship where, you know, like Romeo and Juliet, just kind of smashing together and everything falling apart. It felt to me like theirs was one that had a bit more strength.
It's also great for the audience, isn't it? When the audience realise that somebody on stage knows as well the thing that they know, and when are they going to work that out? So just from a pure dramatic point of view, for the audience, you know, I did a film of Twelfth Night a few years back with my late wife when she was playing Viola, and I was Feste, and there was the bit where she's about to come into something, and he stops her coming in. I put my hand on her chest, and she's dressed like, the next line is that who you are and what you will are out of my welkin. And so at that point, from then on, Feste was in on it, you know. But he's like, whatever, you know. And so now the audience are going, oh, is he going to let anybody know, or what, you know? And I love those. You can find these moments in Shakespeare.
Yeah, the complicity with the audience, I think, is always wonderful. Who is the character? And you know, it does feel like there is one character in each play. I think Feste is a great shape for Twelfth Night, of someone that is complicit with the audience. And I think on the subject of Twelfth Night, that's why for me that play is so extraordinary, is that it sets up an allegiance between Feste and the audience. They love him because he's fun and he's musical and he has a great time. And
you
then
have two 12th Night fans in the room with you now. I think we're both.
What's that, sorry?
Yeah, so you have two 12th Night fans in the room.
Oh, fabulous. Excellent. Oh, well, this could go on longer than, longer than it probably will do in the edit, but that's fine. What I love about it is the fact that Feste gets the audience on side because he's funny, he's talented, all the other characters like him. The audience are on board because they've seen Malvolio be a dick, frankly. And they want to see people having a good time at a festival that's designed for misrule, right? So they're on side. Then you get to the point in the play where Malvolio has been imprisoned as a lunatic, and Mariah peels off, and Sir Toby peels off and says, at your earliest convenience, get him out of there. And Feste doesn't. And for me, that is the tipping point in the play where the audience has gone from a strong allegiance with one character to really questioning that, and hopefully by the final reveal of Malvolio after that kind of torture has gone on, have actually shifted. and you get that incredible speech from Feste about the worthy gig of time brings in his revengers.
Yeah.
And it just feels to me like it's so connected to Hamlet and Julius Caesar, strange as that may seem, in talking about doing the wrong thing for the right reasons, or going too far with vengeance and revenge. You know, you look at Hamlet. In seeking revenge, the entire kingdom goes down the toilet, and the only person that wins is Fortinbras, who's not from Denmark. And similarly, in Julius Caesar, they kill Caesar, which they think is the right thing to do, and every single one of them dies. And in this one, you get to see Feste take it too far, and you get to then examine yourself because you were complicit. You laughed. That whole time, you as an audience member were laughing. And then you get to that end of that play, and you're like, what have I been laughing at? What have I been complicit in? And I think that question of audience complicity for me is one that's so exciting to explore, and sadly is one of the things that we can't do in this medium. This allows for zero complicity with the audience. Of course, you can hope that they feel it, but what I'd love to explore is through promenade or immersive work or something like that, actually getting physical complicity and a greater degree of audience onboarding with the actual progression of the story.
So here's a question for you then, which coming off the back of all this, approaching the place through this technology, is there, obviously, I think the answer is yes, but some things you've learned through doing this that you're going to be able to take with you back out into the real world again? Is there things that you've learned doing the plays this way that you're going to apply that you maybe wouldn't have thought of doing before you had to do it this way?
Yes. One, I think, is the poison of luxury. And by that, I mean too much time. If there's too much time to waft and explore and counter conjecture and etc., you can end up with a really muddled product, I think, that does neither one thing nor the other. What this has done for me, which is a really important thing for me as a director, I have $100 million ideas. I'm a Hollywood blockbuster director in here.
Yeah.
And I will never, ever, well, you never know, but for now, at least, I'm not working in that kind of territory, right, with those kind of budgets.
Hollywood ideals with the Poundland reality.
Exactly, yeah, that's it. That's literally what we say to people at the start of rehearsals. We say, we have a $1 million idea. We want the Poundland or the Dollar Store version of that idea. And often the ingenuity of that and the human creativity that it takes to muscle a big idea through a small capacity is more impressive, more engaging to an audience than the big CGI version of it would be. And I think that's a really important lesson that I've taken from it. I think I've always cared deeply about simplicity and clarity of text and story. And that to me is kind of what comes first. And then if there's wonderful acting through that, great. But if the audience can't understand it, they're not going to care what emotions you're having because they don't understand why. So this has been a great honing exercise for me of just doing hundreds of thousands of words of Shakespeare, being like, how do you make sense of this particular thought? And so hopefully by the time I've done this, all of these shows will serve as a comprehensive R&D for any of these shows that I go on to direct on stage. You know, I'll have found my way through what is the sense of most of it, hopefully. And so I think that's going to be really useful. What else have I learned? I feel like I'm learning constantly all the time, and I'm learning from everyone. I feel like I'm going to be so much of a better actor for having done this process, because I've worked with hundreds and hundreds of actors now, and I've seen how they work. I've seen stuff that I want to steal. You know, I've seen, oh my God, that person's really good at that. And I've seen it enough to get an idea of how they're doing it. And now I want to really go and try that out for myself. I've also seen actors that are easy to work with and how much more of a good time they've had. And I've had as a result of that. And I'll be perfectly frank, I've not always been the easiest actor to work with. I think that's what happens when you're also a writer and a director, when you also have storytelling thoughts of your own. I think you can get in your own way when you come to be an actor with that stuff. And I think that's something that I've really learned, and I'm looking forward to getting back in a rehearsal space and being a much more malleable performer. as well, I guess, because I've got it out of my system in a way. It's like, well, that version is over there. Now I can do your version, because that's, I'm not trying to prove anything, I suppose.
That's why I love being just an actor. I'm so tired of telling people what to do or making it up on the page. Please, I am your clay. Mold me.
Go for it, absolutely. And honestly, I am looking forward to getting back to that. It's been 6 months now. We've got 3 months to go, where I have been the captain of the ship, and it is tough. It is wearing, and it does feel like going back to being an actor will be, as Ben Crystal put it, sinking into a warm bath. It's going to be delightful. And that of course is the other thing that I've learned from it is, I've made relationships with people that I had never met before this process. I've received extraordinary mentoring from a whole series of people. We've got people that are editing our scripts that I'm learning from all the time in terms of what choices they're making and why. And they have much greater knowledge of the plays than I do. And often they're sharing that knowledge and context with me while I'm doing my preparation. And that's amazing. We've got Ben, who's curating our incredible introducers, who every week, what I think maybe people don't understand when they watch it is that I have no idea what they're going to say, what they're going to focus on, what matters to them about the play, what their lens is on it. And so oftentimes they'll come in and they'll talk about the play in a way that has almost nothing to do with the production that we're about to watch, in terms of like, it didn't inform the approach of the production at all. But that, again, is so wonderful, because it's another lens through which the audience can watch the play that wasn't intended by me, I suppose. And that's been a really great thing. And I've learned about the plays on the night as much as I've learned about the plays through the process of doing them. So yeah, I think it's an embarrassment of riches, really, in terms of how much I've been able to take from this process, and how much I've enjoyed every different aspect of it, actually, to be honest, because obviously I've been able to partake in it once as a performer doing Bottom in Midsummer Night's Dream. I've been able to direct them all, but even just getting involved in the casting side, getting involved in the script editing side, it's been the best possible preparation, I think, for a career in stage work in earnest, because I don't think there's anything anyone could throw at me now that would surprise me.
And Gary, if you haven't yet seen Rob's Bottom, particularly Rob's Bottom's death scene, it's still going on. It goes on for so long, and it's so funny. It's both well acted and a magnificent use of the zoom frame.
I was going to say, because that's going to be very interesting, because that is such a physical sequence, that the play within a play. It's pretty much one of the ones I want to dive into first anyway, being a bit of a favourite of mine, but also it's so physical, that sequence, that I just want to see how that's been managed.
And the whole play actually is so physical. You think about 3-2 with the lovers in the forest.
That whole scene.
It's relentlessly physical, and it was the
which is usually one that takes up a whole rehearsal in itself when you're doing it, just to get the physical, of that scene. You just go, right, yeah, we're just doing that scene today, guys. Yeah.
Absolutely. And it was, we spent 3 nights with the lovers in 3-2 doing camera blocking, just going moment by moment and being like, what would we do on the stage, and how do we sell it with you 500 or sometimes 5,000 miles apart? Because we had one guy in Canada, one person in London, and these people have got to create the illusion of a shared space. And Midsummer was the one, more than any before it, that really made us drive forward the use of camera movement in order to sell the idea of shared space and shared interaction, I suppose. And yeah, it's well worth watching just for that, I think, because it really forced us to reinvent the medium one more time.
Rob, we're so grateful that you took this time to talk with us, and I know your time is precious. You really need to get back to work. You've got still a third of the canon left to do in another couple of months. So
what are you doing here talking to us? Go, get away.
And there he is. He's off. Good night, everybody.